Hello there guys and welcome to That Anxious Gamer. Today I'm going to be taking you through 5 things you probably did not know about Stormgate, the upcoming social RTS from FrostGiant Studios, a lot of the developers of which came from StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3 fame. So for this list I'm going to be going through each point, giving my thoughts about the point, and at the very end of the video after point 5 we're going to be going through a bonus point that I think is one of the most interesting things that a lot of people do not know about this game. So let's get directly into point number 1. So number 1, guys, is going to be about armor and how armor is going to be working in Stormgate. Unlike StarCraft 2, you're not going to have numeric point reductions for each armor. So like by getting +1 armor, +2 armor, +3 armor, you're not decreasing physical damage by these numbers. What's going to be happening instead is very similar to a MOBA in that you're getting % damage reduction for each armor upgrade you're getting. Armor is still up in play, and they're not even sure if they're going to keep the armor system into the full game. But for now, it's going to be % damage reductions for physical attacks. Spellcasters and spell attacks are apparently immune to this effect. I think this is actually pretty good because I think % health reduction or % damage reduction is quite an effective strategy. And I think a lot of times in StarCraft 2, except for certain breakpoints, armor was not that impactful. For Zealots, for Zerglings, there were certain units that armor was very impactful in. But for the majority of players, I feel like it was hard to conceptualize how much this was going to help you. And for a lot of cases, like let's say, for instance, Stalkers versus tanks, when you're doing a huge amount of damage anyway, getting 1 or 2 armor and getting a small reduction in damage isn't going to help you that much. If you're getting a % health reduction or % damage reduction, let's say that's like 5, 10, 15%, whatever that number is going to be, I think that's going to be a lot more impactful and a lot easier to understand. So I'm in favor of this change, and I think it's a really good change. Let's go on to point number 2. So for point number 2, guys, we're going to be looking at the supply cap. So for Stormgate right now, it's going to be a supply cap of 300, which contrasts to the supply cap of StarCraft 2, which is 200, with Zerg being able to produce over 200 supply in certain instances. But for both of the other races, it's basically 200. And Warcraft 3, the food or supply cap being 100. So I think as the RTS genre has aged and matured, we're seeing that the supply is generally growing a little bit and kind of expanding. It is very interesting to note that the whole Stormgate ideology for the supply cap is you're going to have in-game late-stage units, like Tier 3 units would be in StarCraft 2, that are going to be very good at specific roles, let's say breaking turtles, hitting command centers or other buildings, versus cheaper food supply where you have a Tier 1 or Tier 2 unit that you can mass up in absolutely massive quantities. And they want to balance these two armies where actually having a Tier 1 or Tier 2 unit army that you have just more units is equally viable versus having these big late game stage units that are very good at specific purposes but are less jack of all trades, if that makes sense. Overall, I think this is a good change. I think that StarCraft 2 had a good balance. 200 supply felt good. I think Warcraft 3, 100 was a little different back then, and the game was very different. I think moving the supply up is generally good. They said that in multiple interviews that the actual number of units on screen is going to mirror SC2 or maybe a little bit larger. So I think that's a very good place to kind of go for. Obviously, we want to kind of keep performance in a good way for the majority of people while having big armies on screen to actually have fights and dynamic engagements. So I think that's very good overall. And I think this food supply is very interesting in how smaller armies that are very high-tech Tier 3 armies are going to combat Tier 1, Tier 2 massive macro-based armies. And I'm really interested to see that engagement and that play. And I really hope that Tier 1 and Tier 2 armies can equally fight against the higher tech armies, which is, it sounds like the design philosophy that they're trying to push. So I'm a big fan of this change. So for point number 3, guys, we're going to be looking at how the beta and alpha structure is going to go all the way until game release. So in July 2023, they're going to be having the first alpha test, which is going to be a small group of people, I'm presuming handpicked, that are going to actually go in, sign an NDA, and actually begin playtesting the game. These are people from outside FrostGiant, but it's going to be a fairly small group of people. There's going to be multiple isolated playtests, so this means it's not one alpha or beta going all the way into the game release in sometime in 2024, we believe. It's going to be multiple isolated playtests that are gradually increasing in both complexity and the amount of people that are actually able to access it. So let's say, just throwing out random numbers, let's say there would be 500 or 5,000 people in the first alpha, then there might be 10,000 or 15,000 in the second alpha, and then like the beta may be pretty much anybody who signs up eventually. But these are going to be multiple isolated playtests at different dates. So hopefully that kind of clears up that misconception, because I see a lot of people that think it's going to be like one continuous test instead of multiple isolated tests over time. And the devs have been pretty clear that that's what they're going to actually be doing, multiple isolated playtests over a period of time leading into 2024 and the game eventually launching. So for point number 4, guys, we're going to be looking at unit tags. So what this means is that in Stormgate, every unit will have a specific tag or series of tags which determines how it will fare against other units. So apart from its health or its shields, it may have the tag of light or biological. This is very similar to StarCraft 2, where units had certain tags, and this would basically determine how well they fought against other units. For instance, you do not want to fight Stalkers against Immortals unless you have a huge numbers advantage, because Immortals will generally shred Stalkers, and it's a hard counter. In Brood War and other older games, counters were way softer, and so that's a very interesting point. In Stormgate, will they be going for a harder counter style, very similar to StarCraft 2, or will they be going for a much milder, softer counter, very similar to Brood War? We don't know that yet. There wasn't that much discussion, but we do know that tags will affect how units fight other units and give them either buffs or resistances. And because of that, I believe the tag system will be quite interesting and quite important to look at in terms of what is this unit, what tags does it have, and what role in my army should it fulfill. So hopefully that helps, guys. So the final point of this video, guys, and the upcoming bonus point will both be covered here. So for point number 5, we're going to be looking at the command card and what type of commands you'll have access to. So we know in Stormgate that there'll be an attack command, very much to attack move in StarCraft 2. We know that there will be a patrol command, very similar to a patrol command in StarCraft 2. But we will also know that there'll be some new command types, very similar to retreat. So they're going to have a retreat-like command, very similar to, let's say, Iron Harvest. If you guys ever played that, you could have these big mechs all across the battlefield, and then basically retreat them to your base to get repaired. So instead of manually moving units, very similar to StarCraft 2, where you would grab a unit and you would move it back to your base, and then you would order an SCV or another unit to actually repair it, in this situation, what you're going to actually be doing is issuing a retreat command that is going to be telling that unit to come back to base and get repaired automatically. I think this is very interesting. Whether this is good or bad definitely comes down to personal preference. I do think this could lower the skill ceiling a little bit, because you're basically simplifying a normally complicated task that takes several different clicks into a much easier situation. However, obviously for newer players, this is going to be fantastic, where you can just basically tell a unit, I want you to come back to base, get healed up, and then be ready to fight again. The bonus point that I wanted to talk about, and it directly relates to this point, is time to kill. In this game, Stormgate, time to kill is going to be dramatically longer than in StarCraft 2. This is one of the biggest differences, and one of the reasons that a lot of people associate this game more with Warcraft 3 versus StarCraft 2. So the time to kill is going to be much, much longer in this game. That means that fights aren't going to be determined in 1 to 2 seconds. It's going to be more of a prolonged engagement. There's going to be more micro over time versus, 1 second being the decider of the whole game. So in a FPS example, this might mean that the game was more like Halo versus Call of Duty. Call of Duty is going to be more Twitch shooter or Counter Strike, where very very fast reflexes are important. Halo, there's going to be a longer time to kill, so it means maybe aiming is going to be more important. Very similarly in RTS, longer time to kill is going to be more strategic, more tactical, is going to be important, where shorter time to kill mechanics are actually more and more and more important because since mechanics allow you to do more things in a shorter period of time, as your mechanical skill goes up, generally that favors you, the mechanical player, versus the strategic tactical player. So hopefully that makes sense, guys. Hope these tips have helped you, and please leave me some comments down below about what you think about all these, and if you think they're good, if you think they're bad. Really hope you like this video. If you do, please crush that like button and please subscribe. I'm going to be making a lot more of this, and I really enjoyed making this, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.